Warning: resin is a toxic material and extremely harmful for the respiratory system when airborne during sanding, grinding, or drilling. The dust, when breathed in, can cause short and long-term health problems, including cancer. Please use a particle or dual organic respirator. Thank you.
Hello, and welcome to another modelling video. Today we're going to be looking at the Garage Kit YF19 again. We'll be sanding and prepping the pieces for sub-assembly and test fitting, which is going to involve sanding, cutting and re-scribing panel lines. Due to the nature of this poorly casted kit, a lot of work will be put into recreating detail that has been lost from the casting process. As you can see in the instructions, there's a lot of option parts and variations that you can put this kit together. To save a lot of time, I'm only going to select the pieces that I'm going to include in my final variation of the kit and discard the rest to save time. Like styrene, your resin piece is going to have a nub from where the resin was poured in the mould, but it doesn't have an actual tree to hold it. We'll be cutting off this nub part far away from the actual piece itself and sand the rest of it back away later. The resin at this particular point for the rear thrust is extremely thin, so I believe it's quite safe to use side cutters. Be careful not to damage the resin or snap the resin, as re-gluing it back together or repairing it with putty is extremely difficult, unlike, again, styrene kits. You will also encounter fine walls of resin, which is the leaking point between the parts of the mould, which can easily be snapped off by your fingers and later sanded off. Right now I'm removing an extremely small nub at the front of the nose of the aircraft with a sharp scalpel blade. Slowly chip off bit by bit until you're close to the surface of the model, where you're able to later file or sand it off. Later I take the knife around to the other passes of this large piece and clean off any excess plastic, also before sanding them. Make sure to check regularly with reference photos and your instructions that you are cutting out the correct flash marks and leaving in the correct detail. Also, from the casting process, very fine bits of resin will escape from the joints of the mould, creating flash marks. This is easily removed by a medium grit sanding stick, lightly sanding it down to a very small line, which can be removed later through sanding paper. Now, using medium sandpaper to a finer grade, preferably wet sanding, you're able to remove the remnants of the flash marks. Of course, it doesn't hurt to have an extremely light sanding using the fine grit across the entire body to remove any imperfections, and being a fighter jet, keeping the body nice and smooth for a perfect finish. Just a reminder to make sure you wear lung and respiratory protection equipment during all advice within this particular video. And extra precautions that I do have in place is the extractor booth running at full ball with the filters removed. If you don't have an extractor booth, it's probably best to carry this activity outside, and I regularly submerge my work in water and wipe it off with a tissue to remove excess dust. The challenge with this particular kit is there's nub marks in all sorts of hard to reach areas that needs to be cleaned out because other parts will be glued into that particular space. If you have enough sanding sticks and jewellery or fine files, you should be able to get to these areas fairly easily and they should not become a problem. Trying to use your existing tools can cause damage and a lot of heartache, so it doesn't hurt to invest that extra $10 for that set of files. Air bubbles and moulding damage can easily be covered with Tamiya basic type putty or any other lacquer or solvent based modelling putties. Allow extra time to dry since this is not styrene. I found this putty to have no problems sticking to the resin, and it was quite easy to sand off at a later date. During the cleaning stage and putting stage, you may fill the details and panel lines with gunk yourself, so regular cleaning and rescribing of these lines, which is quite easy to do, isn't a problem and should be taken care of regularly before it does become out of hand or a issue. Other panel detail can seem extremely shallow, and it may be a good idea to deepen it with your scribe tool after painting to be absolutely visible and effective when the kit is finished. Occasionally the mould will break down and some panel lines will not appear on the kit or not identical on pieces, so you'll have to study the instruction manual quite closely and rescribe some detail either using embossing tape or a scribing template. Just remember, when scribing or removing material through cleaning, you're going to have to be as careful, take as much time as you need, and be as sure as humanly possible, because removing too much or cutting into the wrong area will look like shit at the end, and repairing such a thing is extremely difficult and near impossible. So unlike styrene kits, you need to take as much time as humanly possible due to the nature of these kits. Building commercial resin kits, and especially garage kits, is truly a next level in this hobby and requires a lot more patience and experience than styrene models. This is maybe a little late in the game to say this though. It's best to attempt when you're absolutely sure and convinced about your skills. Of course, things like your B Club or figure kits are going to be a lot easier to tackle than something of this particular nature. Try your best not to rush anything. It doesn't matter if it takes more than a year or so to build a kit like this, because you will have something that's truly unique. To this stage it has been extremely difficult, and I do promise it's going to get harder as this build goes through, so even on my end, don't expect this project to advance extremely quickly. After the cleaning stage, make sure you do a sufficient job in cleaning up after yourself, either using a mini vacuum cleaner or wiping up all the stray resin, or otherwise all your efforts in protecting your lungs will be wasted. Thank you for watching, and until next time.